Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about type 2 diabetes and its effects on the human body and its effects on society as a whole. So, a little background information: type 2 diabetes occurs when the body is unable to produce enough insulin to bring glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cells for the body to use for energy. So, this results in excess sugar being built up in the bloodstream, and it causes different diseases to happen, which we will talk about later on in the speech. Okay, so I wanted to also talk about type 2 diabetes and type 1 diabetes because I think a lot of people get confused on which one's which or what they both are. So I'm going to start with type 1. Type 1 diabetes is when the body cannot produce any insulin to bring that sugar into the cells for the body to use, okay? So basically type 1 is genetic, goes down from generation to generation, and it's not preventable. I think that's the biggest thing. It's not preventable. You can't, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So usually people are diagnosed like real young. Usually I've seen people being diagnosed from like 3 to 4 and up till like 21, 22 is the latest I've seen. But I've heard of other people getting diagnosed later. Now with type 2 diabetes, it's caused by, unhealthy lifestyles, not exercising. Usually people with obesity that are overweight usually have diabetes. And the thing with diabetes type 2 is that it is preventable. So that's the big difference I want you guys to know. Type 1 not preventable, type 2 preventable. And it could be prevented by, exercising daily and eating a healthy regular diet and just make sure maintaining those doctor visits. Listen to your doctor. He's going to tell you what to do to get rid of this. Okay, so that's pretty much the big thing with that. And the thing that regulates insulin and sugar in our body is called the pancreas. It's an organ that sits. It's a small, very small. It sits right on top of the liver, on the right side. Okay, so the pancreas is able to. So if you eat something, so you eat like a popsicle, you eat the popsicle, bunch of sugar comes into your bloodstream, okay? The pancreas reads how much sugar is in your blood, and it releases certain amount of insulin so that it can get that sugar out of the bloodstream and into those cells so you can use it for energy. Okay, so with type 2 diabetics, either they don't have enough insulin to grab all that sugar or the sugar is being resistant to the insulin that's being sent out. Okay? So I wanted to talk about symptoms that you should watch for with the certain things that are associated with diabetes. So immediate things are hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. Okay, so hyperglycemia is when your blood sugars are elevated, they're high. A normal level you want to be between 60 and 100. So anything above 100 is considered hyperglycemic. Even though normal healthy individuals can have an elevated blood sugar, it's like say if you eat a meal, if you check your sugar like an hour after, your sugar is going to be high. It's going to be like 150, 160 because it's still trying to get all that sugar to go back down. But the main thing with diabetic people is that even if they didn't eat anything, their blood sugar is always going to be high unless they're taking medication. Okay, so the things you're going to watch out for with hyperglycemia are people are going to experience excessive thirst and excessive urination. So the reason for the excessive thirst is because your body wants to get rid of that sugar, and the only way it's going to get rid of it is through your urine that goes to your kidneys. Okay, because it's not able to, the insulin's not doing its job, so it's going to find a different way to come out of your body. So it's going to be through those kidneys. Okay, so that's where the excessive thirst comes from, and then the frequent urination goes hand in hand with that. Okay, now this is more uncommon, but you can have hypoglycemia also, which is low blood sugar below 60. Okay, so what happens with that is you're going to have confusion, irritability, hunger, headaches, weakness. The weakness is because your sugar is going to be so depleted, your body is going to need energy. It's going to need more sugar. So that's why you're weak. You can't feel like you can't do much. And then the headaches is your brain telling you need to eat something. I want sugar. I need energy. And the brain is like one of the most powerful organs in your body that uses the most glucose. So that's why it's going to be telling you get something in your body, give me food. Okay? So those are the more immediate things that happen. Later on, if the diabetes remains untreated, you can have certain things like neuropathy, blindness that's related to those vessels tightening up and you don't get blood flow. Okay, and then you'll have peripheral vascular disease. All right, so I have some diagrams right here actually. This is the one illustrating peripheral vascular disease. Peripheral vascular disease, otherwise known as peripheral arterial disease. So you see right here that this is a normal vessel, okay? You see the blood flowing freely through it, okay? On this side here, you have a damaged blood vessel, which the walls are weakening from the sugar. The sugar breaks down and weakens the vessel walls of veins and arteries, okay? So, and also people that have diabetes usually have other cofactors involved going on, like hypertension, high blood pressure. You're gonna have the diabetes there, and then you're gonna have also triglyceride buildup and fat buildup. Okay, which is what you see here. That's the yellow stuff. It's some plaque. Okay, it's also called atherosclerosis. So it's going to clog up those vessels, and with those weakening blood vessels and the clogging of those blood vessels, the blood is going to be depleted going through here. So there's not going to be as much blood flow. And usually this occurs in the more of the extremities, like your hands and arms and your legs and feet. Okay, usually it doesn't affect like up here, like in your central body as much because the veins are much bigger and everything. So what can this can lead to in your extremities is things like this. Okay, this foot specifically, you see how it's turning black, a little gangrenous. That's all dead tissue. Same thing with that toe right there. That's why you see a lot of people with diabetes, they get a lot of amputations in their extremities. Like you'll see fingers missing, you'll see toes missing, they'll get their feet or their knees from their knee down amputated because they'll leave this diabetes untreated. And what happens is for such a long period of time, those vessels are tightened up and they're not getting adequate blood flow. So those extremities are just not getting any oxygen or anything from the blood. So another reason why people can get this is that with the decreased blood flow to your extremities, you don't have the nerve endings anymore that'll tell you if there's pain. So what happens is the decreased blood flow doesn't give any oxygen to those nerves and they start to die and they don't regenerate. So you won't be able to feel anything in your legs at a certain point. So people that walk around with diabetes, they could step on a nail and not feel it. And the main problem with that is that if they don't feel it, they don't know they have an injury. And then if they have diabetes, they don't get blood flow to those areas so that it can heal. So what happens is it starts to become necrotic. It doesn't get the oxygen, it doesn't heal, it doesn't coagulate. Like it'll just keep getting worse and worse. Okay, so I'd say that's a pretty big issue with diabetes and diabetics in general is that specifically. And then if you leave it untreated, you will have you could possibly form sepsis, which is when you get an infection in your blood. So all that dead tissue will come up your leg, and then it will eventually get into your bloodstream, and you have an infection in your bloodstream circulating throughout your entire body, which would cause death. And it's very dangerous. So those are the things that you want to treat, and why you don't want diabetes. Now that we talked more about the effects on the human body, I'm going to talk more about like the financial aspect and like how it affects society and how people function in everyday life. So I was looking at a study on the CDC website, and they were saying that around 9.3% of people in the U.S. have diabetes or are undiagnosed with diabetes. And if you think about that, that's around 29.1 million people in the entire country that have problems with diabetes. All right, and the medications that come along with this aren't cheap. Insulin's expensive, hypertension medications are expensive, and think of how many times they're going to go to the emergency room for complications, go to their doctor's offices for visits. It's a lot of money. And there's actually another study I looked at in the American Diabetes Association that in 2012 over $245 billion was spent on treating and diagnosing diabetes, and they were saying it's a 41% increase from 2007. So I can only see it going up from here as more of a problem unless we start as a whole as a country, eating better. And there's more conversation that can come with that because healthy food is expensive and a lot of people can't afford it, and that's why a lot of people go to McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King's because the food's cheap and it fills you up quick for a cheap amount, but even though it's really bad for you. So this also affects people's functioning because people with diabetes they're weaker. They don't get adequate blood flow to their brain sometimes. They're always tired. It decreases their performance level at work, and not even that, it affects their independence too later on in life. You get those people that have blindness because those blood vessels are tightening and they don't get blood flow to their eyes. They'll start to go blind, and it's irreversible, unfortunately, and they won't be able to drive anymore. And think of the independence that's taken away from someone if you can't go anywhere. You have to rely on other people to take you places. So that's why we need to start, being more diligent about treating diabetes with, eating the right foods, exercising, because it would go a long way. Okay, so that's my spiel on diabetes.